You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
So, you think we're getting old?
Better than the alternative.
Is it?
We're still here.
You know, Jim, when we started this all those years ago, loyalty was the only thing I believed mattered in business. If a man said he would do something, could do something, his ability to deliver on that promise was the only thing that separated him from the crowd. I guess, if I'm also honest with you, that in my younger, more naive days, I was prepared to believe that talent, good ideas, and a good, strong work ethic was really what was required. I thought it must be, after all. It was what everyone kept telling me. It's what was written in all those business books, after all. Work hard, be a man of honor, standing on one's own 2 feet. Be a man, my son, that's what I was told. You keep your head and play the game, and on and on. It turned out it was a total load of rubbish. No one cared if I worked hard or lay in my bed until midday. The only thing they ever gave a damn about was that I was good for the money. Let me put it another way, Jim. You were the ideas man, I'll give you that. You were the one that spotted a market and knew how to exploit it. And for that, I have to take my hat off to you. But remember something, so there'll be no mistakes in the future. The bankers that run this country couldn't care less about your next bright notion. They're not going to be impressed that you managed to reinvent the wheel. There's only one thing they care about, and it was never going to be creativity. If they don't believe they'll get their money back with interest, they'll never take an interest in any proposed business ideas. You talk about losing the drive to create from nothing. It's easy to gamble when it's not your money that you're playing with. And without me, you would never have got my father to act as guarantor to start up this business in the first place. Subsequently, your ideas would have been worthless.
And without my ideas, Dan, because Lord knows you never had any, apart from how to sack people, your father would have had nothing to back.
I'm sure I'd have found someone else with a few ideas somewhere.
And there's always someone else prepared to lend out money.
And that's how we came to need each other.
No one is ever invited to come to the table unless they actually bring something to the table.
Did you mean that about my father's money?
Did you mean what you said about my worthless ideas?
I never said they were worthless. I just meant that without financial backing, they'd never have got off the ground. I had no choice. I had to float the company. We'd never have raised the money otherwise. The banks wanted far too much. We would never have been able to do all the things we intended to do. The banks would have owned us lock, stock, and all the way to the stationery cupboard. Look, Jim, I know you feel that we have sold out, but that's the business world. Our perceived value was the only thing that gave us any worth to those in the city. We had to sell while we could. You told me that the crash was coming. I believed you, and it even turned out that you were right. When you're playing this kind of game with the city, you've got to try and stay one step ahead, or you drown with all the rest. If we had waited until after 2008, we could never have raised the money.
You gave away the control of the business to those who never had any interest in what we were trying to do. Those that trade in the markets are only ever interested in the immediate gain. They don't look beyond the here and now.
I wasn't exactly the only one playing the system now, was I?
And when you went from being the majority shareholder of 51% down to 20%, you went from owner to employee in one day.
And your shares? How much did you make, personally?
I've never owned shares in this firm.
That's what you say.
I do.
You were never tempted?
No.
You saw which way the market was going. They were worth a fortune at one point. The city loved us. We could do no wrong. It was cash, hand over fist. Those were truly the good times.
But the good times came to an end, Dan, as they have a tendency to do.
Meaning?
Nothing lasts forever.
We're doing all right.
Doing all right? You talk of the flotation and your eyes glaze over, but while you talk of being darlings of the city, those very boys and girls have just forced your hand. They're threatening to reduce this company's holdings to zero. Try and buy back all the shares to get back control of the firm.
I can't. I've tried that.
Tried?
To get back control of the company.
To buy back the shares?
Yes.
You never mentioned this. You never mentioned this to me.
You're not the only one that can keep his cards very close to his chest.
Clearly not.
I decided to use my own judgment.
Which involved?
I spoke to my friends in the city.
You did what?
It was stupid. I realized that.
You told them that it was, what, your intention to buy back the company?
Yes.
Well, how would you be able to do this? Why would those friends believe you? What did you tell them?
There was going to be a merger.
A merger? With who?
I gave no names.
You mean nothing that could be checked?
We'd issued a profit warning. As far as the city boys were concerned, we also were finding the going tough. Joining forces with a bigger, stronger player just seemed like a logical business idea.
But Dan...
Yes, Jim?
Dan, if you put out a rumour that the firm was in merger talks...
Yes?
Then the share price would go up. But you just told me it was your intention to buy back the firm.
Yes, I did.
But if a rumour of a merger got about, the demand for shares will be huge. So will the cost of buying up any remaining shares that can be found. Where are you going to get the money from to buy them back? It would cost us millions, maybe even billions of pounds. You can't be thinking of raiding the pension funds. They're already gone.
No, I wasn't thinking of doing something like that.
But how are you planning to raise the finance?
Maybe I'll rely on the family again.
Oh, even your family doesn't have that kind of money.
I think you might be right.
You said that the only reason this company ever came into existence was due to your father's money.
I think I did. Sorry. I shouldn't have put it so blatantly.
No, I'll weep over it later.
I'm sure you will.
Your father's an old man now.
He is. On his final gasp, I would have said. Can't be long now.
I can see how devastated you are.
Life will go on, Jim. I do have the odd photograph of him lying around somewhere, and tough as it will be after he's no longer with us, I do have some plans for the country estate.
He made his money on the stock market, he told me once. Actually, he bragged about it. A rumour he'd heard, only a rumour, some deal, some company he knew when to buy and he'd known when to sell.
Oh?
He used a broker to set up an account. He called it a margin, something to do with not having to actually own the stock at the time. In effect, the security acted as the collateral in the deal. The stock came from the broker's own inventory, apparently, and when the price dropped, your father purchased the stock at the lower price and pocketed the difference.
Did he?
In essence, that was his business plan. It was just the movement of shares and the various ways of selling them. He seemed quite an expert. All he had to know was which shares were going to fall and when. He said to me once, "Nobody ever made money from working for a living." His little joke.
You think so?
He said to me that the reason he agreed to back this venture of ours was because we would be making things, creating from nothing. He never created anything other than money, and I think now, looking back, that it frustrated him.
So, his guarantee, your ideas, and I was just the one in the middle.
As you said, Dan, it's not an emotional business, it's just business.
You really think I never had any thoughts or feeling for this firm at all, don't you? So what was I? The kid no one wanted to play with? Mr. Lonely? The one that couldn't make it on his own? Let me tell you something, Jim. A long time ago, you helped me. You lent me money that I didn't have, so I didn't have to go cap in hand to my father. I said at the time that I couldn't pay you back, and at that time I couldn't. When we were at university in that final year, I really had spent all my grant and my father's allowance. He had made it very clear that there would be no more coming, and he meant it too. I couldn't make the final month's rent, and you paid it for me. But I couldn't make it right with you. I couldn't say anything, so when you said you had a plan, I saw that as my chance to try and pay you back, with my father as guarantor.
Does he know? Did you ever tell him?
I came clean with him about a year ago. He's not a well man, hasn't been for several years now, as you know. So I decided to explain it all. How the business started, why it started. Turned out he had guessed most of it. He had long since come to the conclusion that you were the thinker in the company. You were the one that was driven, a striver, the one with the big ambitions. You were the one with an eye on the horizon. That's how he put it.
That was kind of him.
Yes.
And what did you want?
Me?
The firm has never been just me, Dan. There were always two of us right from the beginning. Where did you see this all going? You must have had a vision of some sort. It wasn't just my pushing, you were also pulling.
I suppose I wanted my name on the office door. I wanted to look like I'd made something of myself, left my stamp on the world, done something worthy of the name, been a someone. Is that so wrong, Jim?
And you didn't think you were?
I was a rich man's son. I saw it in the eyes of everyone I ever met. I see it now. I see it in your eyes. I think I've always seen it.
I always thought you were a someone. You didn't have to set this firm up just to step out of your father's shadow.
But I didn't, did I?
I'm not sure
By taking his money, I was firmly fixed within his shadow. To pay you back, I agreed to be the one person in this firm, not here on merit.
Stop playing that poor little rich boy's record. I'm sick of listening to it.
Oh, it was always easy for you. There were never any expectations upon your shoulders.
Give it a rest, Dan.
It's true, Jim. I'm sorry to have to be so blatant, but it is. You were one of the up-and-coming.
Give over. Stop trying to give me the hard luck story. If you feel guilty about being born with a platinum spoon in your gob, that's your problem, not mine. I've never once thrown my humble beginnings back at you. I couldn't care less which distant relative slept with who knows which lord of the manor in the past. My only question to anyone that joined the company was simple. What can you do? What do you bring to this company? I don't, and no one I know cares if you've got blue blood running through your veins or not. We sat down, we talked about how to change the world. Do you remember that? You recall the two young, fresh-faced kids the world didn't know and couldn't care less about? We sat in yours and mine university rooms and looked at what we saw, and we didn't like it. So we sat down together and came up with a plan to save the world, starting with this country and then with the intention of moving on to the rest of the planet. But we had a plan, didn't we? A plan years ahead of its time, a plan to change everything.
And it was a plan that changed everything, Jim, and it was noticed. We couldn't hide it forever.
I never said we should.
And you also never said just how dangerous it could be.
I never thought it would be.
You were wrong.
Though we were trying to help people.
And what did you think would be the reaction of those in the city?
It's nothing to do with them.
We set up a bank, Jim. We set up a bank.
The high street banks refused to lend out money. We saw businesses, healthy, strong businesses, go to the wall for nothing more than the want of capital that the lending services of this country were sitting on and simply saying no to anyone and everyone that needed access to it. We watched as chain stores were crushed into the ground just so the boys in the city could sell their shares and the banks take back the units on those same high streets right across the country. We watched as the demand for higher deposits priced more and more out of the property dream, and we heard of the corruption and manipulation of financial products that we all knew in truth were a bit dodgy, turn out to be totally beyond belief. So yes, we did something different. Something special. Our bank lent money. We changed lives, Dan. We gave people a chance when the high street shut the door in their faces. We did something to be proud of. Our website last year became one of the largest suppliers of loans at competitive rates in the country. We took the bankers on at their own game.
And you thought they wouldn't react?
Well, certainly with time they would have to...
No, not with time, Jim. Almost from the beginning. They watched us grow from the start, watched us start to take market share.
You mean word spread?
Oh, it didn't take much more than a Google search to learn that we were still giving out loans when almost no one else was. We even kept our repayment rates low when the rest of the market was at 6%. The financial blogs were full of us. Those newspaper articles you're so fond of quoting back at me, we were the best thing since the half shekel of the synagogue, a new kind of banking, everyone's champion, the one bank on the side of the little guy. Last year, we helped over 1 million businesses. Do you start to get it now? Can you imagine the conversations behind closed doors?